Well, welcome back to Behind the Curtain, presented by Markel. My name is Chelsea Sutton, and I am excited to be joined today by Casey Little, the on-site official farrier here at the Run for a Million in Las Vegas. You've been here for multiple years as the official farrier. Talk to our viewing audience, for those of them that don't know what a farrier does. Break it down, basic 101. What is it that you're doing for horses?
So a farrier will come in and trim their feet, trim their toenails per se, and we'll put certain types of shoes on their feet to protect their feet and help the horse's soundness so it can have a long, healthy life.
Talk to us about what it takes to become a farrier. You know, take us back to your beginnings, how you got introduced to this industry and what brought you to the Run for a Million.
So when I was a child, we had several horses, and my parents would take me to the farrier, and they would drop the horses off, and I would sit there with them all day, and it intrigued me as a little child, young child. But as I got older, one farrier asked me when I graduated high school if I wanted to apprentice with him. So I did that for 3 summers in between going to college. And I just kept going back, and I was hungry for it. And so after college, I graduated and went out on my own shoeing. And for a while, I kind of got bored because I was just shoeing everyday horses. But then I got another opportunity to start shoeing reining horses, and that really took off and done really well.
What'd you go to school for? What'd you study?
Ag business.
Okay, so sort of familiar, but certainly not learning the technique of being a farrier.
Right. It was kind of odd because I was actually I was paying the university to go to school there, but I was also shoeing the university-owned horses. So
really?
I was getting a little bit of my money back.
A little bit, I'm sure.
Right.
That's awesome. Tell us the difference between shoeing those everyday horses to reiners. What created that intrigue for you?
The reiners is just so precise, and they take such good care of their horses, and they take pride in what they do. And the precision in the reining horse industry is just really minute. Like it's just, it's so in depth that it intrigued me, and I like that precision, and it drives me to get better.
We're here at the Run for a Million, where it's known for that reining competition. On Saturday night, 16 horses are going to run for $1 million.
Right.
First place will take home $500,000, which is life-changing.
Yes,
right?
It is.
We also have Rein Cow Horse that's going to show here. We have cutters, we have the Cowboy Invitational, we have a bucking competition. There's a lot happening that's going to involve an equine athlete. When you are dealing with a cutter or a Rein Cow Horse or even a barrel horse, compare some of the things or share some of the things that you are looking for different from one to another. What are you considering?
So the biggest consideration is the shoe that we choose to put on the back of the horse. Some shoes are made for the reiners to where they can slide a long ways and they're slicker, right? Where the cow horses, we don't necessarily always need them that slick, and the cutters we don't need at all. But as far as the balance of the foot and the trimming of the foot, it's all the same as far as balance for the skeletal system, but the shoe preparation that we put on the horses is quite a bit different.
And maybe for those that don't know the difference between those sports, explain it. Why would you want a sliding plate on a reiner different than you would on a cow horse?
So a cow horse needs, when they're going down the fence, which we'll see Friday night, they need to slide a little bit, but they also need some traction, so when they turn the cow back on the fence, that the horse doesn't, their legs don't slide out from underneath them. So they need a little bit of traction. But we'll still put a small sliding plate on them, like a 3/4 or 7/8 wide sliding plate. But then we'll drill and tap it and put little studs in it like cleats. So when they go down the fence, they still have some traction.
Fascinating. Here, you're a few minutes late for the interview because you're dealing with real competition environment.
Right.
Right? What could happen that would need you right now in this moment at a competition?
So like first thing this morning, the first horse out had lost a shoe like 15 minutes before. It was to compete, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to put the shoe back on so the horse can compete and have the best chance at winning.
I appreciate you make it sound real easy. And you make it sound like there's not a lot of technicality to it, but there is. Because, you're talking about to the centimeter, to the millimeter of precision.
Right. Yeah, so if I turn the shoe just maybe 1/8 of an inch one direction or the other, the horse may not stop straight. It may not travel correctly to where it can run down the fence. So it is very difficult at times, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, we don't see a ton of accidents in the reining world, but we do in the cow horse. It is, you're not talking about just winning the class, you're talking about safety.
Right.
Right? You, the horse, the cow, all of those things matter.
Right. Yes, they do.
Tell me a little bit about consistency and how you approach, these horses are coming from farriers at home that see them all the time, right? Know what they're competing, know what they're doing, know what their nuances are. I know that my right hip is a little bit stronger than my left, right? And so I think about that when I'm buying shoes. I'm sure horses are similar. What's the relationship that you have with the riders, with the owners, when those horses come on site to an event like this, knowing that they've come from a professional before you?
So a lot of times when the person walks up, whether it's the owner or the trainer, I try to just in conversation ask them questions about their horse and how it's going at the horse show. But most of all, I kind of know most of the better horses. I know all the horseshoers, so I kind of have a background on the horses when they get here. And if it is a difficult horse or something, I'll call that horseshoer and ask him exactly what's going on. That way I get all the information. And that I don't mess something up that he's been trying to accomplish, because it takes a little bit of time to get a horse's foot where we want it to be. So communication is the biggest thing.
Take me through an example, and you don't have to give me the horse's name or the rider's name, but give me an example of something that might be going on with that foot where you're having a conversation with Farrier at home, and between the two of you, you're making a plan for moving forward.
So there was a horse the other day that came in and it can't take any nails in its feet. So they've been gluing shoes on it, and I had to glue another shoe on it. And I just wanted to kind of know how much pressure I could put on the horse's feet, because we used the packing to go underneath the pad, underneath the glue-on shoe. So it was a little in-depth, but we got through it. And everybody was there to talk about it and kind of give all the details, because the horse is pretty sensitive to certain things that go on their feet, especially that one.
I can imagine. I mean, I know the difference between my heels and my tennis shoes. So,
right.
How much time goes into a process like that? When you first hear about, I need to work on this horse, to they walk away and you're done with them?
So sometimes if I'm just tacking on a basic steel shoe, it could be 5 minutes. If they tore a lot of foot off and I got to use some glue or acrylics, it can be 20 minutes, 30 minutes. Or if we're changing out sliding plates, like here in Vegas, the ground is really slick and fast, and a lot of guys are going down in shoe size. So that could take up to 40, 45 minutes to an hour.
That's very interesting. Talk to me a little bit about that. First of all, explain slick and fast, to our viewers. And when are those riders coming to you? It's right now Tuesday. Saturday's competition for the million is Saturday, so you've got a time distance there. They've only been here for a few days. Talk us through that.
So most of the horses arrived on Thursday, Friday. So they really haven't had they've ridden them, but they haven't had a chance to stop them. They're just kind of getting them used to the place and the ground. So yesterday, I believe a lot of guys really started stopping their horses, and they're figuring out that the ground is really slick. It's pretty fast. The horses are going a long ways, which will be fun for Saturday night. So
a challenge for cow horse.
It is a very big challenge for the cow horse, which hopefully they'd make the ground a little deeper. I'm sure they will. But so a lot of the reiners have been coming to me, and we're going down in shoe size. Most of it's from the part of the countries they came from, like Europe. Their ground's a lot heavier and deeper, so they came with bigger shoes on. So we're having to go down on some of those horses. And some of the Northwest horses, their ground is pretty abrasive and slick, or not really slick, but it's more abrasive. So we're going down on some of those horses too.
And of course, there's, we're going to talk to Tracy Brumley a little bit later, who's ground management here, on the nuances between that, because you're also talking about moisture content, dryness,
right? All
of those things take an effect, including on the foot.
Yes,
right.
Most
How
definitely.
My foot fits in a shoe in a humid climate's different than dry.
Yes, we've been dealing a lot with that from the horses, especially coming from Texas and Oklahoma. Their feet are wet. They've been getting a lot of rain and humidity there. And so when they come to Vegas, it's dry and hot, and the hoof capsule's shrinking. So a lot of loose shoes from that.
What happens, I know this, you know this, we've seen this sport, but many people are watching for the first time. What happens in the arena if a shoe comes off?
That's it. I mean, they can't fix it. They got to keep showing. But if it comes off right before they go in the arena, I can fix it. But while they're showing, it's pretty important that they stay on.
I grew up in reining and, of course, was introduced to cow horse and cutting pretty early on, although I'm still learning about those sports. So I certainly have an appreciation for what it takes to get done what those competitors do in the arena. Reining is really based on a general from the rule book, which says to rein a horse is to control his every movement. Right. You used a word earlier, which I thought was spot on and really encapsulates reining, which is precision. And it's interesting to hear about your background and find that that's what intrigued you about shoeing those reiners, because from a competition perspective, we see, and if you're watching, if you have ticket to the show, or whether you're watching online, you can watch the difference between the NRCHA, the competitors, the rein cow horse competitors, and their reining pattern, and the reining exhibitors, the NRHA exhibitors. And even though they might be doing the same pattern or very similar pattern, there's a stylistic difference, right? It looks different, it feels different, the shoes are different as we're learning, and a lot of that I think comes down to reiners are made solely to rein, right? They're trained for that, they're shod for that, all of those things. Those cow horses have to do multiple disciplines, right? They're working with that cow in the herd work, and they're of course going down the fence. Are you finding that thinking about the relationship with the cow, and this would be true with the cutters as well, does that make it harder to shoe them, or is it just a variable?
It's just a variable, I think. It's application of the shoe. As far as the trimming of the foot, I feel like in most cases that it's the same.
And you mentioned earlier the similarity from those disciplines in terms of balance. You as a farrier are thinking about skeletal structure, muscle. Talk us through that a little bit.
So the trims of my horse's feet, I shoe for soundness first off, to keep the horses sound and healthy. And I do that off the joint spacings and the conformation of the horse. Secondly is the application of the shoe. And sometimes that will come in effect to keep a horse sound. But that's my number one goal, is to keep the horse sound. And that's why I trim that way. And I try to trim every horse the same. It's just the application of the shoe that is different per event.
Have you ever heard the concept of 10,000 hours?
No, I don't believe I have.
So the idea is it takes someone 10,000 hours working in something or doing something, practicing something before you become an expert.
Right.
And of course, 10,000 hours can be spent in a short amount of time, right? 2 or 3 professional years, or, nights and weekends for 5 or 10 years. At what point in your career, I'm not going to ask you how old you are on camera, but at what point in your career, we could arguably say we are at the most prominent, we're certainly at the richest reining event there is, and the most prominent performance horse event in the industry. You don't have a lot of grays. At what point in your career did you feel like you had the skill set that it took? And more specifically, what can you look back at and say, these are the things that helped me understand what it would take to work on these kind of athletes?
Some days I feel like I'm still not there, and that kind of drives me to get better. And I think you can never lose that drive to keep learning, because once you think that you have learned it all or you know it all, is when something's going to get thrown at you that you won't be able to handle. So it was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, I felt like I was capable of shoeing a reining horse, even though I've been doing it for 20-some years. But I still wanted to learn, and I still go and learn. So the biggest thing that I guess that would contribute to me learning is working with other reining horse shoers, but then also working with other shoers that work in other disciplines, whether it's just strictly at the vet clinic or whether it's on a dressage horse. I still go hang out with those guys and I talk to them on a daily basis. So I'm still learning and trying to get that. So I never want to quit learning.
Probably why you're here.
Hopefully.
I appreciate that. If someone's interested in this line of work, what advice would you give them?
Oh, I would be an apprentice for 8 to 10 years before I would try to go out on my own.
Really?
Yes.
Why?
I think I would be an apprentice with a specialty horse shoer, whether it's a reining horse shoer, dressage shoer, anything like that that specializes in one thing, and I would learn as much as I possibly can. And you may not have to apprentice with the same guy for 8 years, but I think that it'll fast track you to a better career.
I didn't prepare you for this question, but my uncle was a farrier in the first portion of his life, and just listening to you talk is taking me back to watching him shoe and work on our horses growing up. It is a physically demanding profession.
Yes, it is.
How do you manage the physical demands of that, and what would you advise someone who's maybe early on in their career?
I would say do lots of sit-ups and push-ups. And when you're young, you don't think about that, but when you've been doing it for 20 years, you start to think about that a lot every day. Sit-ups and push-ups, keep your core strong, and eat healthy. Horseshoers have a tendency not to eat the best kind of food, or they're eating on the run, things like that. I would contribute that to a little bit of it.
Right before you, I got to talk to Dr. Scher, who's the official vet on staff, and she said the same thing about the horses, right? The nutrition is so paramount.
Right.
So I concur. If you could give advice, and this is the last question I'll ask you before we wrap up and I send you back down to the barns. If you could give advice to yourself when you got started, what would you say?
I would say to be an apprentice for 8 to 10 years. Instead of 3, which I have apprenticed for 3 different people, but it was throughout my career instead of the first 8 to 10 years. The second would be to take every opportunity. Yeah, that's probably the biggest one.
And if you could give yourself like an attaboy, you know what, this worked, I'm really glad I did it this way.
That would be probably 6 years ago. I had 11 horses in the open, not in the open finals, but in the fraternity finals. 4 or 3 of which was in the level 4 open fraternity finals. That was the year that I was like, I got it.
That's a big attaboy, yeah.
Yeah.
Toot that horn. That's awesome.
That was a really cool year.
That's very
really
cool. Where's home for you?
Southern Illinois.
Okay, and if people are in that region or in that area and want to look you up?
There's some local vets that have my telephone number and can get a hold of me through them.
Great.
Yep.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for being here with us. I know you have a lot of work to do, and being on call and on hand is certainly an important part of that. So thank you so much, Casey Little, the official farrier, here with us at the Run for a Million. Thank you for tuning in with us at another show of Behind the Curtain, brought to you by Markel. We'll see you next time.